What's up, everybody? Matty Willz checking in live from the WENZ studio right here in Cleveland. And welcome back to another in our weekly press briefing with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. Each week, we feature a different guest that we can kind of, get some real answers to some real questions all surrounding COVID. So today's guest is Angela Henderson. We can bring her on now. She's the program manager for the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
Doing great. The sun out a little bit more today. It's not as cold, so I'm not as as cranky driving down to work today. But we got a lot going on in the world of COVID, and we know that there are some new quarantine guidelines. We're going to get to those in just a second, but I wanted to start with, just remind some people what are some of the common symptoms of COVID, and what are some of the things that we should be looking out for when it concerns coronavirus.
Very good. So common symptoms are very common. And so the interesting thing about COVID is that those symptoms are symptoms that you could have for something else. That would be fever, body ache, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, backache, muscle ache, things of that nature. So those are very common symptoms of COVID-19.
And then what are some of the first things you want people to do if they're experiencing any of those symptoms?
I'd like for you to stay at home. We would like for you to stay at home at CCBH because we're trying to slow down the spread. That's what this is all about, is slowing down the spread.
For sure. So let's get into it. We got new quarantine guidelines. We off camera. I know it's a lot, but just, say it as simply as you can and just let people know what are the new quarantine guidelines that we all are adhering to right now.
Okay, thank you, Matty. So the quarantine guidelines, it is giving you, I hate to use the word option, but it does give you options. So there are 3 options. The first is our regular quarantine guidelines. And so that is 14 days. Quarantine is not isolation, everybody. Quarantine is not isolation, right? So 14 days, and we use those 14 days because that lowers the risk of transmission, particularly if you work in like a nursing home setting, a congregate group setting, or something like that. Always, when you're in quarantine, you want to monitor your symptoms to make sure that you're not showing something, because at this point, when you're quarantining, you don't know if you're positive or not. Okay, you've just been exposed. So then the next option, we have 14, then we have 10, right? So I decide that I want to, and of course, it's always in collaboration with working with your local health department or with Cuyahoga County Board of Health. And so that means that I am going to do 10 days. If I do 10 days, I still want to maintain 6 feet of social distancing, wear my mask, monitor my symptoms. But I should consider around the 8th day, I should consider getting a viral test. Why am I going to consider getting a viral test? Because that will confirm that I'm still negative and I'm okay. But I still want to maintain the 10 days. So I do my 10 days. I get verification that I am still negative. Boom, I'm out. During that time, I still am monitoring my symptoms, but I'm out and about now with my 10 days because I'm still negative, right? The next option would be 7 days. So if I use the 7 days, that means, let's say maybe for whatever reason, I had gotten a test. I got a test, and these quarantine periods always start after your exposure to that positive person. Sometimes you don't find out for 2 days later, but your quarantine starts at the point of exposure. So even if it's 2 days, you're 2 days in, 3 days in. Makes sense? Right. So if I do my 7 days, that means, let's say day 5, I had a negative test. Then I'm okay. Then 7 days, I take my quarantine. I'm not living with anybody that is immunocompromised. I'm not working in a group setting where I might possibly expose someone, and I'm not showing any symptoms. Then I'm okay, but I still have to go through my 7 days. If something changes during that interim, I start to exhibit symptoms of COVID, and we're continuing to remind you of that, then you want to, or you discover, maybe you get another test and you discover that you're positive, then you want to complete your isolation.
All right. Well, Angela, I gotta say, you need a notebook to know everything that you just said. You need to take some good notes, but it should be. I know that you guys got a great website that can help with that if people want to just reference that, right?
Absolutely, yes. And I believe that you have our website listed. So
should
you
be
always hop on.
That's ccbh.net, correct?
That is correct. And we also have a COVID call center where people are there working very hard to answer the basic questions, difficult questions, questions of isolation and quarantine.
Good deal. So again, if you're just joining us, we're speaking. This is part of our weekly Cuyahoga County Board of Health press briefing that we do with a different member of that department every single week. Today we have Angela Henderson on, and if you missed it, we just covered the new quarantine guidelines. So please, it's very important. CCBH.net. It's running right down there at the bottom of the screen if you need any more details on that. But let's keep going. So why is it important to tell your close contacts that you tested positive? You know, sometimes people might not want to expose themselves, but why would it be important for them to do so?
It's super important. Pretty much at Cuyahoga County Board of Health, we're saying help us, because there have been so many positive cases. It really helps if you haven't received that call from Cuyahoga County Board of Health as of yet, that you are already ahead of the game. That means you're being proactive. And you're not waiting until your family members start to exhibit signs. You're not waiting until your grandmother, your great aunt, your grandfather has been hospitalized because of COVID. You're saying that if you were around me and I tested positive, I'm letting you know. I'm saying, hey, you know, cousin, auntie, sister, brother, please be aware that I tested positive, and I want you to monitor yourself. And that means they should be quarantining.
Right. And then, you know, kind of in line with that, in your experience, y'all are around this all the time. Why do you think some people think there's a stigma around, you know, COVID or having COVID?
Oh, Matty, that's because it's that heavy weight. You don't want to be the one. You don't want to be the one to spread it to your family. You don't want to be the one that has to be locked down for 14 days. You don't want to be the one that has to be locked down for 10 days. And so I think it comes with it. It's like an overshadowing, you know, feeling of guilt, embarrassment. You know, people, they're like, oh, so you got that COVID, you know, they're like, oh, so nobody wants to be the one. Who wants to be the one that's missing from the office for 10 days? And everybody, they know, now we know it's HIPAA, so they're not telling everybody, hey, guess what? Angela has COVID, but you're missing for 10 days. Where is she at?
Right.
Because she has COVID. So I think that's a part of it. But I think we need to get beyond that and just, it doesn't mean we have to broadcast it, but those that we know that we've been close to, we need to give them a heads up.
I'd be remiss if I didn't send a shout out to LaVon Lee for tapping in. She said, hey, DJ Matty and Angela. So we did know she was going to chime in. We appreciate her. So after a positive test, right? Say you get a positive test, but you don't have any symptoms. Why is it still important for you to stay home and stay away from people?
That's a great question. So that's called being asymptomatic. And so we are familiar with that terminology, those that work in public health and in the medical field. Asymptomatic means that I carry the virus, but I'm not showing any symptoms. And so myself, LaVon, those that have previously been on, we deal with hundreds of cases. And many people I talk to, they say, no, but I'm asymptomatic. They don't use that terminology, but they're like, I don't have symptoms. I don't have symptoms. It's important when you're asymptomatic and you've tested positive that you still continue with your 10 days of isolation, because it is possible for you to spread it. So I can be asymptomatic, I cannot show any symptoms, and I can still give it to my loved ones, those that I'm close with, in close contact.
Just always erring on the side of caution in situations like that. So we talked about this a little bit last week, but this could definitely use some revamping. What is the difference between isolation and quarantine?
That's my favorite question. I love it because I find that a lot of people get it mixed up and they use the terms interchangeably. So isolation is that, yep, you got it. You got COVID, you tested positive. And that means that I need to be isolated, even in my home. The best method would be if I could isolate from my children, from my husband, particularly if they're not showing symptoms and they're not positive, because then that keeps it just contained. If I'm quarantining, that means I didn't get a test, right? And I'm not positive, but I have been in close contact with someone that is positive. So that means that I am keeping myself at home, right? And I'm letting my family members know as well. I'm not going out and about. I'm not shopping and things like that, because it's very easy for you to start later on at day 7, day 8 and show symptoms. So we'd like for you to stay at home as well, so you don't continue to spread the virus.
Thank you. Again, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Angela Henderson of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, talking about COVID. So I watch a lot of sports, and I've been hearing this term a lot lately, contact tracing. Some of my favorite players are missing games due to contact tracing. What is it, and then how does that help stop spreading COVID?
Okay, so that's great. So contact tracing is what we do when we contact a positive person. We're getting information about who have you been in close contact with. Close contact means a person that you've been close to for whatever reason. You pulled your mask down, you were with them longer than 10, 15 minutes. Contact tracing is our way of being able to, again, this is all about slowing down the spread of the virus. It's all about keeping everybody safe. And I know people feel like I don't see it. I don't see it. It seems like cases are rising. We're working very hard to make sure we slow it down. So when we reach out, please be honest and tell us who you were with, what part of you. It's all, we're not sharing. We're not saying Matty told us. We're not saying that, right? We're just saying that we got information that you participated in this event, and we just want to ask you a few questions.
Angela, if there's one thing you ain't gonna have to worry about, if somebody in my circle got COVID, I'm telling the right people, okay? I'm not going to broadcast it on social media, but the authorities will be notified if they're not taking the right precautions. So we talked about this a little bit off camera too, working from home. There's been a huge influx of people working from home, and now my light's going to start acting crazy. But what suggestions do you have for people who can't work from home? Like if they have to go into work, how can they stay safe?
So I would say if you have to go into the office, maintain your 6 feet, maintain social distancing, cleaning high touch surfaces. Please check yourselves. Some jobs, everybody doesn't have a thermometer, but that means when you leave the house, check your temperature to verify, okay, how am I feeling? Do I feel okay? It's almost like doing a self-check. And so you can still go to work, you can still be safe. There are some people that don't have options. They have to go to work, but that means that you want to kind of, sometimes I say, you want to
I'm going to fix this light. Keep going.
I see you. I see it's okay. So you want to just kind of not linger too long in group settings so that you're able to maintain 6 feet of distance, cleaning high touch surfaces, and monitoring your symptoms. And that's
so then would your recommendations be similar for those of us who still have a lot of Christmas shopping to do, who are too scared to order online because it might not be here in time for the holiday?
Yes, please. Please. Yes. So that means that try and go during off-peak hours. I was in Macy's just recently and I was like, wow, where is everybody? So try and go during off-peak hours where there's not a large amount of people. Don't wait to the last minute. If you do have to go out, online is the best because that stays safe. That keeps you safe, keeps your family safe. If you have to go, we know that now everybody has to wear their facial covering. So keep your facial covering on your face. All the stores have all the signs and they have things posted that encourages us. So just try to, be encouraging and continue and try to enjoy the holiday with the new parameters that we have.
Right. And, as I say, I'm not an expert like you or anybody else that I've spoken with from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. But I will say that I just tell people to use common sense a lot of times, man. Just use some good old common sense. We know how we should act when, the flu's been around forever. And you know how you got to wash your hands extra and stuff like that during flu season. So we got to just take it up a whole bunch of notches because this is a worldwide pandemic. So just use some common sense. Listen to the experts. Go to the website, ccbh.net, to get all of the details. And the last question that we have today, and we've been seeing, Lisa, I've been seeing in headlines that what we may be experiencing with this surge may be a result of the Thanksgiving gatherings. And we know people are still going to get together for Christmas. So how can people safely enjoy the holidays, if they're going to choose to be around their people?
Yes, and I know I miss the big family gatherings. I have a huge family and Thanksgiving was very quiet for me. But what I would say is try to do it safely. Stay within your family unit. Try not to mix a lot of groups together because if you may have a younger family member or older family member that may work in an area or there is where there's COVID, you don't want to incorporate that into your large group. So try to stay in small family units. Stay at home if you can. Maintain 6 feet of social distance and keep those masks on. Of course, your masks are going to be off at dinner time, but do the best that you can.
Do the best that we can. And we do have a question from Leva. She asks, I'm considered a close contact of a positive COVID case. I decided to get a test and my results are negative. Must I still quarantine?
Yes, you must still quarantine. But as we discussed earlier in the show, we talked about the different options of quarantining. So I encourage you all to hop on our website and look, because there are options. There's 14, 10, and 7. And so if I tested negative, that means that I have the opportunity to embrace that 7-day quarantine option.
So really good answers. We really appreciate all of you guys, not just you, Angela, but everybody else who's come on with us. These are extremely important, and we cannot overstress how careful in all the precautions that we should be taking, just because it's, people are dying. Like, it's literally a life and death situation. So I'm not sure why anybody wouldn't want to take all the proper precautions, but we appreciate you. We'll be checking in with you guys again next week. And again, the website, please, if you missed the new quarantine guidelines that Angela so eloquently went over earlier, please hit the website, ccbh.net. And then, of course, the phone number is 216-201-2000.
Perfect.
Did we get it all in?
Yes, we did. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Enjoy your holiday if I don't speak to you. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yes, everybody enjoy their holiday. Stay safe.
Thank you.